Hello makers, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how I made these two cards for the Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous 2022 release. I used the new Floral Elements CMS 445 stamp set, as well as the Noteworthy CMS 446, and I used two of the new stencils from Tim and Stampers Anonymous, as well as some crackle paste and some of the Distress Embossing Glazes. I'm going to show you how I made the background, which is one that I believe Stacy Hutchinson came up with, and Tim has shown in several of his demos and things like that. And then I stamped the flowers. I'll show you how I did that. I did that iron off technique before I fussy cut them, and then just stamped the sentiments to sew onto the background. So right now I will go ahead and do a demo for you, and then we'll wrap it up. To make this card, you're going to need several things. So I have them, most of them out here for you. You're going to need a focal element. I'm using Floral Elements CMS 445 from the new release. I need a sentiment, so I'm going to use one from Noteworthy. You're going to need some crackle paste, and the opaque, not the translucent, for this one. A palette knife for spreading the texture paste. You need a layering stencil. I'm using this one because it kind of looks nautical, and I'm going with a little bit of a nautical theme. It could be patriotic as well. I'm also using the smooth side of Distress Watercolor because I want the background to be white. That's why I'm using opaque crackle paste instead of the translucent, because I want the white to really show through on this. And then you need some Distress Glaze, and I am using the new Uncharted Mariner for this sample make that I'm doing for the tutorial. Candied apple, fired brick, because I'm not sure if this is going to be too bright, but I think this is too muted, so I might mix the two. And then a little bit of speckled eggs. So you can see it kind of has a marine color theme, as well as it could be patriotic. You're also going to need something to stamp with. I'm going to go ahead this time and use my stamping platform because I find it easier. You're going to need clear embossing ink, as well as clear embossing powder, a heat tool, and then also you'll want some distress colors in the same kind of color theme here that you have. So I'm going to again use Uncharted Mariner, as well as some reds and light blues. You'll also need a green. I will most likely for this one use Bundled Sage because I think it'll go well with this color scheme as far as a green goes. So those are most of the things you'll need, and a water brush for watercoloring. You will also need a heated iron and just some paper that you can use to iron off, like, you know, I just have some old thin cardstock that I will be using for ironing off because I, again, use the iron off technique. So those are the things you're going to need, and then let's get started making. I have already opened the tops of all of the Distress Glazes because you want to work fast with this technique. The top tends to dry very quickly, and then it won't grab hold of the Distress Glazes like we want, and it'll just stay white. And so we really want it before it dries for it to grab onto and hold the Distress Glazes so that we can emboss them later on once it crackles. So you want to be ready for that. Also, this does not fit the whole card front, which I want it to. It's not going to be solid. I'm not going to do it solid, but I do want it from side to side and top to bottom. So I'm going to have to kind of do a little bit on this side, and then I'm going to have to move it over and then do some more over here. So I'm just kind of letting you know that I have already trimmed this down to 5 1/4 by 4 inches so that it will fit on a card front and have a little bit of a reveal. And if I don't want that much of a reveal, then I have in the waiting, a piece of cardstock that I can, or watercolor cardstock that is, I don't know the measurements. It's an 1/8 larger than the main piece and an 1/8 smaller than the card, so that there's just a little bit of a reveal on around all of them. And I could do this in red if I want. I could do it in speckled egg if I want. I could leave it white, whatever I feel like, but I have that ready if I want it. Now, I'm going to lay this on my media grip so it's not moving. I'm going to go ahead and lay this down and get ready to go. Let's see how I want that. So I'm kind of looking, because I'm going to try and line it up the same way. And so I guess maybe if I keep the line that's going through the middle of the circles, if I keep that lined up along the bottom, then I should be fine. It should line up really well when I move it. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this and get started. I'm going to hold it and just go ahead and spread some of that on there. And again, I'm not going to make this perfect. I just want to have some throughout. Now I'm going to go ahead and lift this up and move it over. And remember to keep that lined up right there. Okay, and I'm going to hold this up with my finger a little bit and hold this down so that it doesn't mess up the rest of it. Okay. And like I said, I'm not making it perfect. A lot of this will be covered with flowers and such. Okay. Now this is going to go into the water. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with red, because I just wanted a little bit of red here and there. Not too much, but just a little to kind of pull in some bits. Okay, let's go ahead and get a lot of this on there. That speckled egg. And our Uncharted Mariner. Yeah, that's what I want to see a lot of. Okay, that's looking very nautical to me. And I'm not worried that this is sticking to the media grip, because I'm just going to take the whole thing off and go in and rinse it off. So I'm not worried about that. Okay. So it looks like we've got some good coverage on there. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the tap thing. Yeah. Okay, there's none here, so I'm going to hold that and dump. And that looks like great coverage. So now all I have to do is set it aside and let it dry. While the crackle paste is drying and cracking, we are going to stamp our focal point. So you want to go through and you want to pick some flowers and some things that you think would best be a focal point. And I kind of want this one this time. And what I did the last time was just pick a few and then kind of stick them on here. I did use this one. I don't know that I'm going to use all of these this time. Okay. So just go ahead and kind of arrange them on there. And then you also want a few of the bits of greenery. And remember, you're going to be fussy cutting these, so you want to make sure that the ones you choose aren't going to be something like this that you aren't going to want to fussy cut out. So I didn't choose any of these little teeny tiny ones, but I did choose greenery that I thought would work well. So these are a little bigger than the ones that I used on my original card. I know I did use this one and I did use this one. But for time's sake, I think we'll use some bigger leaves this time. Okay, so that looks good. They all fit on there. I'm going to go ahead and push down, pull it up. And I'm just using clear embossing ink. Again, this is the smooth side of watercolor cardstock, Distress Watercolor cardstock. And I'm getting my clear embossing ink on there. Okay. I'm going to stamp that. Got some even pressure all over there. And now I'm going to bring in my embossing, my clear embossing powder. Looking, and it looks like I got everything. A little bit of extra on that one over there. And now I'm going to heat emboss this off camera. I have the flowers and the leaves embossed, so now this is when you need your watercolor brush. And then I have Bundled Sage, Candied Apple, Uncharted Mariner, and Speckled Egg. And waiting in the campfires, I do have a little bit of some Rustic Wilderness, just in case I need to bump up the green a little bit. So we're ready to go and make a focal point. All right, makers, our crackle paint has crackled and it is holding in that embossing powder. So I'm going to heat emboss this, and you can see the lovely crackles. As always, I did 2 just in case something happens. I have 2, and I have finished, and I'm just letting these naturally dry. I have finished watercoloring the flowers, so they're going to naturally dry, and then we will iron off resist and fussy cut them. But while we're waiting, let's go ahead and get out the heat gun. And All right, so I don't know if you can see the difference between how it's just flat and you can see the different spots versus this little area that I have heat embossed here along the edge that is starting to look like shiny cracked tile. So I'm going to continue to heat emboss this off camera. These are dry, so we are at the point where we need to do the iron off resist and iron off the shiny clear. Remember, this is clear embossing powder and clear embossing ink on white watercolor paper. So we need to iron it off. And I could use the iron off as another resist, but I'm not going to. So I'm just going to use some of that inexpensive, it's the inexpensive printer cardstock. So it's very thin. I have my iron nice and hot, and then I just have a clean inky binky underneath for a little bit of padding. You just want to iron this, and what you're doing is reheating that clear embossing powder so that it melts, and what happens is that it soaks into the paper above and it will leave a nice flat resist of white. All right, let's see how that looks. And I'll show you. So see how it has soaked in, and you can see that there is some of the ink that was on top of the clear embossing that has soaked into the paper. And if I hold this up, you can see that it's no longer shiny. So it's done a nice resist. I'm going to put my iron back to reheat, and I will do the other one. And then what we'll do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to fussy cut around the resist areas around the outside edge, and then we will put these onto the backgrounds. I have all of the pieces fussy cut, and so now really basically what I did to finish off the cards prior, and I have these put onto two different back card bases. This one's dark blue with a white matte, and this one is just white heavy stock. So I just took and kind of on the last ones, I just laid out kind of the green as a base, and then added a few things like this. Kind of went up like that, and just kind of laid it out to decide how I wanted it to look. And then really all you have to do to put it together, and this one you can see I accidentally cut one of the leaves off. It's not a problem. Just when you put it on, you just glue it in place there. So then the last thing that I would do is probably when I attached them to my other cards that I sent to Tim. So is I used pop dots, or not, well, dimensional adhesive, and I put these underneath some of them so that they would be raised up a little bit. And I just kind of tried to keep the flowers in one basic area, kind of like this across. And as you can see, I just stamped a little bit of watercolor cardstock with a sentiment, and I went ahead and used Uncharted Mariner as kind of my main color that tied everything through. And then as soon as I get these attached with not, I'll use collage medium, and then I'll also use the pop dots. They'll be finished. So you can also see that I sewed around the edges with my machine, and then I did a little bit of zigzagging in a couple of places to just add a little interest. And that's how I completed these cards. All right, makers, I hope that answers any questions that you might have had about how I made these 2 cards. If there's anything that you would like clarified, please contact me through my blog at playswellwithpaper.blogspot.com. There is a little comment or a contact line at the right, in the right-hand column, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have that I didn't cover in this video. And other than that, I just hope that you are inspired. I thank you so much for stopping by. I always, always, always appreciate your support. I hope that you have a very crafty day.